it's like putting money in the bank. You know, these are the kind of cars that you can buy and you can drive them off the road and you're not losing $10,000 on a new car. These go up in value instead of down. Since Plymouth is no more, they do not make any more Plymouths. That's what really kicked the price of these Plymouths up. I'll be putting gas in it, somebody will come up and say, is that really a Hemi? They just can't believe it's really a Hemi, and they'll want me to pop the hood to really, because they've never seen a real Hemi engine. In a real Hemi engine, they used to call them elephant ears. And it's a big motor, and I have to run premium gas, plus a little bit of additive to it to keep it from pinging. In this car here, I'm lucky to get 5 to 6 miles to a gallon. And they do have 2.4. This car did come with 2 4-barrels. That's the way they came out of the factory. They were rated at 425 horsepower, and that was for insurance purposes only. But basically, they say these torque out at about 500 horsepower. And those 2.4s, they do suck the gas. My first MOPAR was a 1968 Plymouth GTX I bought when I got back from Viet Nam. I went there in '67, got back in '68. I had a Mustang, but I didn't have very good luck there in 1 month of it. And then I decided to go down and buy a MOPAR because I knew about MOPARs, and that's when I bought my '68 GTX, and I loved it. 440 Magnum, beautiful car. And it's the same body shape as this, only it was GTX on it. Parts for this car are hard to find, especially the Hemi car. The parts are real high. Like if I was to have to replace the heads on this car, where normally a head for a 440 or 383 might run $500, $600, $700. I understand these heads run about $3,000 to $4,000 a head, and that's expensive. When I had my 440 GTX, I used to race against the Hemis back in the '60s up at International. And there was a guy that had a black '68 Hemi Roadrunner, and of course I had my GTX, but when mine was fine-tuned and the Hemi was fine-tuned and we went head-to-head at the light, about the last 800 to 1,000 feet of the track, the Hemi would pull me. It has that last-minute surge on it, and he'd beat me every time. Now, if the Hemi wasn't running, if it wasn't tuned up, and the 440 GTX was tuned up and running good, I could take him, but not by much. But these Hemis, they had to be fine-tuned all the time. If you notice, the Roadrunner here on the side on the door belongs on a '69 Roadrunner. The '68 Roadrunner is basically a stand-up Roadrunner, which doesn't show him running like it does here. And it just, I don't know, it just gives it more like it's a Roadrunner. And it has to keep up with the horn. And this car has flaws in it, such as like right here, there's a little flaw here and there, and then they probably need new Hemi emblems. And there's one here where somebody closed the hood. Somebody slammed it down when that rod was up. This is the way I bought it. I haven't put any new ones in there. It's never been wrecked as long as I've had it. But it needs to go into restoration. These are actually Magnum 500 wheels that came with your Roadrunners, your GTXs, your Hemis, or they also came with, a lot of the Hemis came with just a rim with what we call the dog dish hubcap that just snapped on. But these are your Magnum 500 wheels, and a lot of guys don't like those, and they put Kragers on, or they put some other type of wheel on there. But I like these because that's basically what came with these Roadrunners at that time. Now to show you a little bit on the inside, which is pretty much stock. The speedometers were why GTXs had like 150 miles an hour, where, as you notice, there's only 120 on here. They did have the factory tachometer that was built in there, factory radio. Now isn't factory, but it was put on because with this kind of an engine, you have to at least run about 60 pounds of oil pressure. And it's very easy to, this doesn't have any kind of idiot lights or anything telling you what the oil pressure is, so that's why that's been put on there so we can monitor the oil in there. It's got the standard radio, which came with it, and basically automatic, which is one of 391 automatic Hemi Roadrunners that were made in 1968. And if you notice over here, this little stand-up Roadrunner, that's what should be on the doors on the outside instead of the running Roadrunner. Now, if I was to go back and have it redone, I would probably have the stand-up Roadrunner put back on it again, back stock, but I like it the way it is. There's no air conditioning, no power steering, it's just raw turn. It's got your off and on switch, your heat, defrosting, and your fan. Then your radio was AM, FM. Everything's original except for this oil sending unit there, which is this. But like I said, that was put on there to monitor the oil pressure in the engine, because you hate to blow one of these engines or lose one because it costs so much, it's so expensive to replace it. 1968 on the Roadrunners, 68, 69. The difference between a coupe and a hardtop is, well, when they're pushed out like this is the coupe. And supposedly they're a little bit stronger than the hardtop because of the post right here. The coupes have the post where the hardtops don't. Now, if this was a hardtop, it would have a handle down here where you could roll the window down. Okay, since you've seen the interior of the car, I've explained that to you. Let's look at the power plant, the Hemi engine, the actual legend that won NASCAR in the 60s. They banned it off of the NASCAR circuit. This is the 426 Hemi block Roadrunner. This is what makes this Roadrunner. And as you notice, there's two bolts sticking up through there that holds this breather down. Under each one of those, there's a 4-barrel carburetor. This lifts off. Now, these are the two 4-barrel carburetors that power this Hemi engine. They're like 650 CFM carburetors. That's a lot of fuel going through to keep that engine going. When I had it over at the shop here a few weeks ago, they've been both dunked and soaked and rekitted. Arlen rekitted them, and we've set them. My buddy Arlen Harrington over in Wellington has a shop, and he's a MOPAR lover. He loves working on these cars. He's rebuilt Hemi motors, and he just loves working on these cars. So I just take it over to him, and he takes care of me. And also, he's put a new master cylinder on, new brakes all the way around, and also a clutch fan, which I learned something on that. It had a normal fan on there, which what I understand drew like 25 horsepower away from the engine, where this only draws 5 horsepower away from the engine. 1 horsepower per fan blade. There is no power steering, and I thought it would be hard to steer this, but it's really not. Once you get the car going, if you had to park it in a parallel parking, I'm sure it'd be kind of tough. But other than that, it's pretty easy once the car starts rolling. It's almost like it has power steering. This is the 426 Hemi Legend engine, and this is the way they came stock. Come out of the showroom floor stock, and the difference between Roadrunners, if you bought a 383 Roadrunner, it maybe $2,000, $2,300. And as the further you went up, like if you went to a full 46-pack Roadrunner, you could add probably another $800. And then the elite car was the Hemi Roadrunner, so you could add another $1,600 if you wanted a Hemi. And you could order those from the factory that way. This part here underneath the hood is a fire-resistant deal that they put on Roadrunners and mostly MOPARs back then, that if the engine would catch fire, then this wasn't going to burn. This is fire retardant. That's why it's like that is. It's that rough looking stuff. Another little thing is this little side marker light right down here. When it's round like this on Dodge Chargers, on Roadrunners, that means it's a 68. If it's oblong, it goes long like this, it's a 69. And another thing too is the on the VIN up here, the first letter on the VINs here, if it says R, it's a Roadrunner. If it says S, it's a satellite. And a lot of guys take satellites and make them into Roadrunners. I knew of a guy in Mulvane that had a beautiful Roadrunner, and he was selling it. And I happened to go look at the VIN and I saw an S. And I said, so are you telling people this is a clone car, that it's not a true? He said, oh yeah. He says, it's not a true Roadrunner. He says, I said, I know, I saw your VIN number. And also too, in 68 and 69 on the Roadrunners, there's a J in there in the VIN, which designate that it's a Hemi car, a 426 Hemi car. And this has got the J. 68 and 69 had those. And all around here, I usually drive it. I enjoy driving it. The only drawback now is that it has to run premium in it, and of course, you know, gas the way it is now. When I go to car shows, I'll have the hood up and guys will be telling their wives, you know, there's the Hemi, and it's just kind of neat to see people that still remember these cars. And the GTXs and so forth, they had 150-mile-an-hour speedometers, where in this Hemi, it's only got a 120-mile speedometer, which you'd think, being a Hemi, you know it'd run 150 plus. I've never had it up to where I buried the speedometer because I don't want to twist it off. I love Roadrunners, love cars. There's a lot of people that have cars like this, and they're sitting in the garage and they never drive them. They have a cover over them, they never take them out. It's an investment to them. Well, that's fine, but you know, you have these cars, enjoy them. And they can, if you take care of them, they'll still be an investment. I took all my racing out on the track. I'd go to International and I'd take my GTX down there at the time and race it when I was back here in Wichita. And then when I was in California, I'd go to Pomona and Riverside, and I'd race there, and just quarter-mile drag strip. And I used to run my GTX, and I'd run against Oldsmobile 442s, and I'd run against Hemis, and I'd run against Mach 1s, and you know, all the muscle cars back in that era, and it was fun. And there's times I got beat, but a lot of the cars that beat me, they weren't stock. They'd added a little bit, maybe a little bit heftier cam and so forth, and the horsepower, everything was basically compatible with each other. But basically back then, it all came down to the driver. You know, I'm just glad I was right at the right age where, you know, I lived through the muscle car era. There'll never be muscle cars like they made in the 60s. And to me, they're untouchable. They're history. You know, there's never gonna be another era like in the 1960s, in the muscle car era. You have something that nobody else has. Very few people have them. I love racing, but I'm just getting too old for it. And I'll just kick back and drive my cars and enjoy them, and talk to people, and it's interesting talking to people, and they always wish they had one.